It's the People's Voice on the Community Channel on TVU with your host, the conservative commentator, Adam Stevenson. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, brother?
Excellent. You've got a pretty high-profile show today, so I'm going to let you take it away.
All right, cool. So, Malish, how's it going?
You.
I'm good. So, I saw your video that where you were talking about racism there the other day. It was pretty good. It's one of the best videos you've done so far, I think.
I do a lot of videos. Lately I have been doing a lot of videos. Mostly they're in my language, but whatever seems to be bugging me, I just kind of speak my mind about it.
Yeah,
It's just I would say, I want to put it in good words, stupid things happen all around the world. And I'm from Pakistan, born there, but I've lived in Canada for 21 years now. So when I see things there, I call them out. I get a lot of abuse for it, but that's fine. But when I see stupid things happening here in Canada, because we're supposed to be, the country of equality, every time anybody says anything about Canadians, when you travel all around the world, they always say Canadians are very nice people.
yeah,
I don't think I've ever heard anybody, wherever I've gone, and I've traveled quite a bit, that Canadians are bad or they're racist. So
yeah.
I don't know. Have you ever heard that? Because people that travel and people, when you tell them, "Oh, you're from Canada," they will always
Yeah.
say, "Oh, Canada, they're very nice people."
Yeah,
So all
yeah,
of
I
a
get that
sudden,
all the time. I get told we're really nice people all the time. Anytime I travel anywhere and see people from different cultures and different parts of the world, I get called a racist on a regular basis, almost daily here at home by white liberal Canadians and
yeah.
some Black Lives Matter people because they don't like me pointing out the facts and
Well,
statistics around me.
I don't think it matters your color. If you don't
Yeah,
agree to their point, it could be I'm called a racist and I'm brown. So
yeah,
I don't even understand where, like I'm saying, things don't make sense and things are getting stupider by the day. It's just
yeah,
so I had to come out and especially call out on my community, the brown people, because they're so woke now, right? And they're right beside them. Okay, Canada is so racist, and I'm like, really? Because you're doing pretty well. So how did you make it to that? If
yeah,
everybody was so racist, how did you get all this? And within 10
yeah.
years,
Like
Here,
Ahmed Hussein and what's her name with the M103 bill,
Ikra
Ikra
Khalid,
Khalid, right?
yeah.
If Canada is so racist, how did you guys get to such high level,
Hmm.
prominent positions of authority within our political system if the political
Yeah.
system is systemically racist and designed to hold you down and keep you from achieving anything? It
Hmm.
doesn't make any sense at all, right? And
Well,
yeah,
also Justin Trudeau, that is, in a way, he went on and he said, if you look at his MPs, they're MPs from every different color.
hmm,
There's not, and then he wanted to have a quota for that. He had a quota
yeah.
for the LGBTQ. He has a quota for the women. All that stuff.
Yeah,
But then he himself is standing there and saying, yes, there's systemic racism. Well, if it is there, you've been in power for 4 years. What have you done about it?
yeah,
Like you've been pandering
yeah,
on it, but how can you believe it?
yeah.
I say,
And
show me.
there's a quota there, but it's not enforced universally across the board, right? So if you're a white business owner, you're mandated that you have to have a certain number of black employees, a certain number of
Yeah,
Muslim employees, a certain number of LGBTQ employees. But if you go to say a Pakistani owned business, do you see any
yeah,
non-Pakistani people working there? No.
yeah.
If
And
you go to
that
a
was my
Muslim owned
question.
business, do you see
Yeah.
non-Muslim people working there? Do you see any gay people working in Muslim businesses?
Yeah.
Probably
It,
not, right? And
yeah.
that seems to be an issue, and I don't have a problem with, if Pakistanis want to hire Pakistanis in their community, go ahead.
Yeah.
If Chinese want to hire Chinese only in their communities and in their restaurants, go ahead. I don't want to go to a traditional Chinese restaurant where some European guy cook the food because I'm not getting traditional Chinese food, right?
Yeah.
I went there because I want
It's
to
true.
eat Chinese food made from somebody that came from China who brought their culture and their food with them because I want to enjoy that, right? And
Mhm. Well,
somebody
the thing
else who
is,
hasn't had the entire lifetime experience of cooking that food probably isn't going to
yeah,
make it the same way, right?
no, that's true, right? But to put that in conversation for the argument's sake is, that if we're going to put these rules on some businesses, then why aren't we applying these to the other businesses? If you're going to call them racist, because the
Yeah.
argument was, oh, Pakistani restaurants or Indian restaurants, they have it because they speak the same language, they know about the things better. Well, then we can put the same thing on white folks, Well,
Exactly. And that
they speak
almost seems like,
English,
yeah.
because a lot of times, when somebody doesn't speak English and oh, they're being discriminated against. Well, it could be the both ways. If you're gonna start something, then it's gonna swing both ways. Um, and I know a lot of people that don't even have to speak English anymore. That's another thing. Is like, why do we even have people that can't speak English? We should have people, all of them, if they're coming to
Hmm.
Canada, they should learn to speak English.
Yeah.
Before, I thought that was one of the rules of coming here, like immigrating here. But now we have so many refugees and people coming from all different races, cultures.
Yeah.
And they, like, for example, if somebody was coming from India, they would come to Brampton, and they wouldn't have to do nothing about it because they can go get a cab, they can speak
Hmm.
Punjabi, go to a restaurant, they speak Punjabi, any kind of business you want to do, they
Hmm.
have your language available, so you don't really have to even try to speak English. Like,
Yeah.
some of them, they get by because they come across somebody that only speaks English once here and there, but yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, where do you find that your abuse it tends to come from the most on your political opinions? Like, where do you tend to get the most of that from?
Sorry, can you repeat that again? My daughter just scratched her face right now.
Oh, yeah, no worries, no worries. Mine's making a bunch of noise in the background here too. I don't even know if she was told
So
to.
what was your question?
Hmm? Where do
What
you
was your question?
find that the majority of the abuse directed towards you and the abusive language that you have to deal with is coming from when it's in relation to your political opinions?
I get mostly abused, or called out
Hmm.
from my own community. I
Yeah.
have come across some white people, some black people that attack
Hmm.
me sometimes, just I tend to not get into too many arguments on the internet and on
Yeah.
Facebook and stuff. I've done it before, and it's good for your engagement for the
Yeah.
page.
Yeah.
But it's just you don't, like, you lose brain cells, honestly, because sometimes it's just you're not gonna get your point across.
Yeah. I
I
love
was
to
talking to
argue and I love to argue and debate,
yeah.
especially on Facebook because I can read their arguments and then like look things up and research things before I make my counter argument. Whereas when it's a face to face, I don't have the opportunity to do that. I run into a lot
Yeah.
of arguments about systemic racism, especially. And I recently had an argument with someone here in Canada, and they were saying how Canada is systemically racist and institutionally racist. And I said, show me the policy that's systemically or institutionally racist. And of course, they couldn't
Mhm.
find one, right? They just sort of backtrack and say, oh, well, it's the people that are in there that are in control and da 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 da. And it's just like, well, if there's not an actual policy that says you can't hire people because based on this or that or the other reason, or one person deserves a lesser sentence for their criminality than another person does
Mhm.
based on their skin color, something to that effect, then you can't
Yeah.
say that the institution or the system itself is racist. There can be racism and individual cases of racism within the institution, but that's not
Mhm.
institutional or systemic racism. And I always counter that with a certain law that is in Canada that is systemically and institutionally racist. And the problem
Mhm.
with that law is it's called the Gladue Act. And what the Gladue Act says is that because of things that have happened to Indigenous and Native peoples in this country, that they have
Mhm.
the opportunity to receive a greatly reduced sentence for serious violent crimes. for crimes generally, but serious violent crimes are included in that. So things like rape, robbery, assault with a weapon, even murder and attempted murder, right? I heard of a guy who he had stabbed someone multiple times, right? Like 40 or 50 times he stabbed this guy, and he was up on attempted murder charges. And because of the Gladue Act, it got reduced to assault with a weapon, and he got off with like 4 months. And it's insane, right? If somebody of a different skin color committed the equal offense, they would have been punished to the full extent of the law, right? So somebody's receiving a greatly reduced sentence based on the color of their skin, and it's written into law. That's institutional racism, 100%. But when you say that, people don't like it, and they're like, oh, well, it's okay to have it that way. It only applies to white people, right? Well, that's completely backwards thinking. You know, if it goes one way, it has to go both ways. It has to be the same way for everyone, and we all have to receive equal treatment and have equal opportunity, or else that is institutional and systemic racism, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, when they talk about systemic racism, okay, you know what, I would believe that maybe 20, not 20, but like 15, maybe 10 years ago, you know, because my family came here, and a lot of them had to do some schooling again. Most of them did end up getting good jobs. Most of them do have good jobs now. I would have maybe believed it, you know, like then, because they had to come and prove, and then had to go do the same schooling again. You know, even the doctors that were coming here, they had to do the schooling again and, you know, get some experience. You know, they used to ask those questions. But nowadays, like when I got my last job, I was like, my boss was like, you know, it's good that you're you know, first of all, you're brown, you're from Pakistan, and then you can speak another language, and you're a woman, you know. So there are preferences given to brown people, or, you know, women, or LGBTQ, or natives. So there is certain things that companies are doing to, you know, include everybody. But I personally think that each individual should be picked for what they can do. Like for me, I could
based
also
on their
do the
merit.
job, you know, exactly. Not on based on their colors, and or, you know, what sexual preference they have and stuff. But
you're exactly right.
yeah, so we're not doing that. And to be honest, it's in every system. You're going to find that, you know, there's preference given to people that they know, you know, like for example, if you look at the government, most of everybody's like, oh, get a government job, you know, because, you know, you've got those cushions, you know. And if you see one person gets in, they will get their friend in, and then you know, the other friend is in, and it chain continues. And to say that there isn't, if you go to any of the government jobs, you'll see all colors, you know. Mostly women. Office jobs are mostly being taken by women, actually. You'll find, you know, go to a bank, you'll see maybe like one guy, two guys. Yet we're
Exactly.
like, you know.
People need to be hired on their merits and their abilities to perform the job, or the task that's needed to be performed, not based on whether they're a woman, or whether they're LGBTQ, or Muslim, or Black, or Asian, or any one of those things. The second you give somebody a leg up or special kind of treatment based on their skin tone, or ideology, or whatever reason, you're discriminating against the person who's not what they are, right? So you give any demographic extra rights or special treatments based on their demographic, you're discriminating against the other demographic, because they're not getting the same treatment as that other person, right?
Well, you know, like I said, if these things were to be said, you know, before, because maybe before there was a little bias, you know, of people coming here and having different names, and, you know, some people that are racist, you know, not everybody is. I've come across a few people, you know, that were racist. You know, it was there, but I think we have broken through those boundaries. Immigrants and Blacks and, you know, natives, everyone has broken through those boundaries to stand here in 2020 per se, we say that, you know, there is systemic racism, then okay, so all these people that have these cushy jobs, like if there was racism, they wouldn't let you go to those schools,
Mm-hmm.
you know, where you can get those degrees, and then they wouldn't let you be in the politics like they don't allow in Saudi Arabia or in other Middle Eastern countries. Like, how come no racist white guy stopped you from getting into the politics or in university? And then Jagmeet Singh, for heaven, like all these white people, whites are still a majority, right, in Canada. How come they all elected you and voted for a guy in turban to be a leader, and he can win and be the prime minister, you know? So how can you say that? I just, it just doesn't make sense. But I find you don't have to make sense in 2020. Nothing makes sense.
Nothing seems to make sense these days. Nothing seems to make sense
this
these
year's
days.
a joke.
Even in the 90s when I was in high school, I didn't see or experience any racism at all at school. Maybe that's because we were in a high school atmosphere, perhaps. I guess someone could make that argument. But, you know, I went to a fairly multi-ethnic school. I grew up in the greater Toronto area. I grew up in Oshawa and Bowmanville area. And I never saw any racism at school. Teachers weren't discriminating towards students of color or anything like that at all. And students weren't either. So I don't know. Like I didn't see or experience anything then. And you know, the majority of people frowned on racism and racist ideology. But that being said, people, you know, I understand that it's that racism is an abhorrent thing, and a lot of people don't like it, and I don't like it. But that, on the other hand, people in a free society, people need to be free to think and say what they think and believe, or else we don't live in a free society, right?
There is a line, you know, when I guess it all depends on who takes it where, you know, which context you take it in. I grew up in downtown Toronto. I didn't, like you said, you know, there was all kinds, all different colors. You had, you know, Pakistanis, you had Indians, you had South Asians, like, you know, Chinese. I remember like my class was mixed, and I think there was only like a couple of white guys, you know, everybody else was Chinese, Indian, Black, everyone was mixed. So I didn't see any racism. I have not personally experienced any racism in sort of a way somebody's like, you know, well, I have, you brown girl or whatever. Once it happened to me in Edmonton, and then a couple of times, I remember this one time we went to Vasega, and this lady was being really mean to us, me and this another Asian chick I was with. And she's like, she's being racist. I'm like, no, she's not. And she's like, yeah, you're brown. And I'm like, oh yeah. Because I grew up downtown, so I never even felt any difference. Nobody ever made me feel any difference on my color. So that was one day that I was just like, oh, you know, I did have an experience with a school that was picking on me too much. And I was like, there has to be nothing but, I guess, my color. I don't know. But for me, to hold it against it and say that, okay, you know what, that didn't let me get to where I wanted to be, I don't think that's the case. Every race, every culture has their racist components, you know. There's a lot of things brown people or Indian people also, you know, used to say or still say about Black people. So do Pakistanis, you know, they have those words that could be equivalent to the N-word. I've seen Chinese people that are very racist. I was actually talking to somebody that supports Black Lives Matter, is Native, and then when yesterday I started talking to her, I saw a very different picture. I thought she was very racist because she was basically telling everybody to get out. She's like, I want everyone out. We natives want our land to ourselves. We don't want your shitty food. We don't want this. And I'm like, wait a minute, were you not just saying you're acting like a racist?
Yeah,
you know,
right.
And then I'm like, how are you going to get
Black Lives
everybody
Matter
out?
movement has has a lot of people within it that have been ideologically subverged by this, right? They're espousing racism. In fact, there was in Toronto the other day, there was a Black Lives Matter leader girl who gave a speech and said that white people were subhuman in her speech. And are the police investigating that as hate speech? No,
No,
no. But
of
when
course.
I organized a protest to it was a vigil slash protest to honor the lives of those who had been victims of Islamic terrorism here in Edmonton. It was a pretty sensitive thing at the time after one of our police officers had been hit with a van attack and stabbed. He survived, thankfully, but anyways, we had this thing and ran this vigil, and the police were and hate crimes unit were coming to talk to me, saying that I'm promoting hatred toward a identifiable group by having a vigil for people who had been victims of Islamic terrorism. And I just found that extremely shocking. But then when it's on the other side of the card and people are actually saying things that are hateful and could possibly actually be inciting violence, which is when you say there's a line, inciting violence is where I draw the line, right? If you're inciting violence against a particular group of people, that's a problem, right? Period.
Of course.
Say whatever you think or whatever you want about a particular group of people, do not incite violence. That's the line, and that's where the line needs to be drawn in our legal system as well, right?
Well, I get told that a lot too. You know, you're spreading hatred, you're spreading, this and that. And I'm like, I'm just spreading the truth. I don't know. You find it hateful. And from my videos, I've never said, you go and do this to this special community.
Exactly.
Everything is changing, in the West. And if you think that like the liberals are not, in every single occupation, if you see they're in the law enforcement, they're in politics. So basically they're controlling the system, right?
Yeah,
and they can do whatever they want. They can give special privileges to others. And like we say, we have freedom of speech, but we still have to watch what we say. You can't really, I understand there's some hate comments and stuff, but I get a lot of hate comments from people living in Mississauga, I've had threats from like my own community and stuff. And I've had to call the cops because I have to report it. I don't know. I think we need, I don't know. I think we need a reform of everything. We need to get into it and, not lean towards too much to the right or to the left, because balance is very important, and certain things will need to be changed. We don't want this like political correctness. If I'm able to say something, Marxism. I don't want to be called racist.
It's social Marxism. That's what it is, right? That's what's happening. We're basically experiencing almost a copycat of the Bolshevik revolution, where our statues are being torn down. We're being told what we can and cannot say. The leftists, social Marxists, are involved in family services, and people are scared that they might say the wrong thing or they might lose their children. Somebody gets upset that Child and Family Services took some kids to the gay pride parade to see grown men dance around in shiny thongs, rubbing their balls against each other, and then someone gets upset about that. Well, then that person's the hateful idiot, and they shouldn't be raising these children because that's causing them harm by having a problem with them being exposed to that kind of thing. And I think it's a pretty natural and normal thing for any parent or any person to find that extremely upsetting that their children are being exposed to anything sexual in nature when they're under the age of 10 years old, right? And then we have this case of the father in BC who's being mandated that he can no longer call his daughter. He has to call her a man. He can't call her by her name that he gave her at birth. He has to call her by a different name.
This is here?
This is here. This is in British Columbia. Yeah.
Because I remember there was a case of another boy whose mom, they were twins, I believe, and the mom was asking the father, she was dressing him up as a girl and everything. And I think it was in States, and the guy actually won.
Mm-hmm.
Um, these are all things done to destabilize the society, right? You're
Yeah.
gonna now what we're gonna have after this, the products that we're gonna get in the next 20 years, a generation. Just imagine what they're gonna be like if we're gonna have a generation, because if everybody is gonna become gay, homosexual, or trans, or they're gonna have abortions, there's a lot of
Yeah.
lives, people are not being born, so
Yeah.
certain
There's
people
definitely been
will
a
have,
very, sorry.
they're
There's
not going to have
definitely
as,
been a
and guess
yeah.
who's multiplying,
Yeah. Yeah.
so look at Germany. So we were talking about Germany. Germany in probably 2050 is going to have majority Muslims. I was
Yeah.
having a conversation with a Muslim friend of mine, and he's pretty moderate. We said we drink, whatever, we chill. So I was telling him that this is all happening, and he's like, no, Sharia law is never going to be here, because these are the people that don't want the Sharia law. They can't
Yeah.
speak up because they'll lose their job, their community, everything that they have. So they can't really speak up, but they don't support Sharia law. But
Yeah.
when the majority is here, they're all gonna, vote for the same thing. And
It's like Lebanon.
exactly. And people
Oregon.
keep saying, just like in Iran and, in other places. That's what I told him. I'm like,
Mhm.
look at this. He was like, no, but Iran was Muslim from before. I'm like, no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Iran wasn't Muslim. They were mostly Zoroastrians, because my great grandfathers, my ancestors come from
Mhm.
there. So, for them to come and take over, and you got to think of, people are thinking of now. No, think of like 50 years from now, 60 years from now.
Yeah.
We're not here, but my kid is going to be here. Do
Mm-hmm.
I want to leave Canada for her, where she's going to be wearing a hijab, which we actually ran away from? It's going to be very ironic,
Mm-hmm.
that my mother brought us here, so we didn't have to. I can wear whatever I want, and I get criticized nonstop on my Facebook
Yeah.
of what I wear. They have a problem with what I wear, so I wear it even more. I'm like, you have a problem, then there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, and
It's like,
it's not even like you're too extreme with what you wear, like if you want to dress nice and you want to look nice and
yeah.
you want to show a little bit of cleavage or whatever, okay, that's fine. It's not like you're excessively off the end of the scale, where like you see
Well, I'm
some
not wearing a
girls
bikini
are,
here, right? They always
right?
go after the bikini, and I'm like, well,
Yeah,
bikini was because I was, I did pageants and beauty pageants
yeah,
and stuff. You're required to wear a bikini.
yeah. Or if you're at the
And
beach or something, that's
yeah, I'm on a beach or in the pool. What do you expect me to wear? Everybody, even if 60-year-old woman is wearing a bikini,
yeah,
it's just a normal here.
yeah.
It's just because on Facebook, my Facebook page, I attract a lot of people from back home.
Mm-hmm,
But then a lot of them do also live in Western countries. And
mm-hmm.
then I get to see their hate towards me wearing what I want. And I'm like,
Yeah,
you're being hypocritical, because you will step outside the door and the other girl's going to be wearing the same thing. And if you have these kind of thoughts for me, I
mhm,
wonder what you would do to her,
yeah,
So you're being hypocritical when you come here and you sit here. And if I'm doing this, then you criticize me. I should be able to wear whatever I want. I know what to wear and where to wear it.
mm-hmm,
Telling us what to wear is because that's what they usually judge you on that. And I'm like, well, okay, if I am this by wearing small clothes, then I guess women that wear burqa, they're this, we can label them as well. If you guys are
yeah.
going to label us, we can label them. um it's yeah, it's just the pendulum is swinging too much. And we need not the conservatives. We don't have the liberals. We don't even have a party to fix Canada, to be honest, right now.
Yeah.
It just kind of looks like the takeover has already begun,
Yeah, yeah, right. Exactly. And things are like getting kicked into high gear here with this Black Lives Matter movement and
Yeah.
everything. And you know, if you go to their website and you read their sort of manifesto, I guess it could be called, it doesn't seem like they care about Black lives. They're more concerned with dismantling the heteronormative society and dismantling the nuclear family and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And right? Like if you take the idea of systemic racism in the Freddie Gray shooting that happened in Baltimore, all the city council members were black. The mayor of Baltimore was black. The chief of police was black. The majority of the command staff was black. Like, please tell me, where is the systemic racism within the Baltimore Police Department on this? It's just,
Yeah.
it's nuts that people are trying to, push this agenda that there's all this systemic racism and using it to basically brainwash an entire group of people, mainly white liberal leftists, with some other black people thrown into the mix there with them, and they're pushing this narrative, right? Like, black people in America are the freest and most prosperous black people in the world. That, like, you go to Somalia and tell me how free and how prosperous you feel as a black man when you live there.
Yeah.
Please, I'd like to know. And they're tearing down people's statues, like Ulysses S. Grant's statue. This is a guy who won the Civil War for the Union, ending slavery, and he was a fierce opponent against the KKK. Black Lives Matter and Antifa tore down his statue because racism, right? Like,
Because they don't, they don't know. Sorry to interrupt you, but they don't know history. So the girl that I was talking to, the whole conversation started because there was a statue of a white man and he had his foot, I don't know whose statue it was, he had his foot on a black guy. And she's like, this should be taken down. And I said, it could be taken down, put it in a museum. It's kind of offensive. Okay, in today's age, fine. But I'm like, if I take my daughter and, it was shown to her, it would be like a lesson to teach her that this was a bad guy, and, this is the things that he did. So something for her to visualize and see and understand. There's a lot of history. And my other question was to her was that, people that made Taj Mahal, they cut their hands, because she was saying something else about back in the days when natives built something, they cut their feet or something like that. So I gave her the example of Taj Mahal. I'm like, should we go destroy Taj Mahal and the pyramids? Like, where do we stop? We start erasing the whole history? Because, to be honest, people don't realize it, but we're living in a very good age.